Right, hello. This is a video to do the to take you through introduction to Windows programming. So first things first, let's do a new project. So the project is going to be Windows Form application. So make sure that is the highlighted one up there. Click OK, and we will get to the environment. Now it will be different to what you're used to, because the first thing you'll notice is you've got a form here, form 1. A couple of other important things you'll need is Solution Explorer at some point. We probably won't use it today, but you will need it, and the properties. Team Explorer, on the other hand, is not required, and I will get rid of that if it ever opens up. Right, so properties is actually quite important. Now, before we do anything, we can just run the program as it is, and it will do something. There we go. There's a form, and it doesn't do a great deal. But there's been quite a lot of code written in the background for that. If you expand that and look into that, then you'll see quite a lot of code. But don't go in there unless you're prepared to muck up your form. Right. So the first things first, let's have a look at our properties. So everything on a Windows form has properties, and they are essentially, because everything's a class or an object, it's like a field in a class, but we call them properties. So we've got text property there. So if I change that from form 1 to hello, you'll see that changes up there. And also, if you change the back color, that will change the back color of the form. And let's give it a nice color. Well, not web, red. Oh, that's a bit too much, isn't it? No, I do. Right. So when we run it now, we'll see that's happened. So now what I've just done is changed it design time. All right, but obviously you can change these properties at runtime as well. Now before we do anything, let's add a control. Now the toolbox over here contains the controls, and if you can't see the toolbox, just go to view toolbox here in the menu, and you can just pick any of these. Now common controls are here, but you've got loads of other ones. When you're doing the timer, you'll find it's in all Windows forms, but a button, we'll chuck a button on a form. So I've not written any code. There's a lot of code being written just by doing that. And what I'm going to do is rename that button. So it's very important that we rename our controls. Now I never rename form 1, always leave that as it is, but if you do another form, then we'll rename that. But for now, let's leave that. So I'm just going to leave that pinned out. So there's button 1, there's its name. Now because it's a button, BTN for button, and combo boxes will be CMB, text boxes TXT, labels LBL. So they have a prefix, and that helps when it comes to programming, so it's really worthwhile doing that. So let's call that button display. Now the rules for naming things are a bit like variables. Can't begin with a number, can't have spaces in it. So we're going to do some coding now. So let's just do something with that. So let's double click on the button. Now when I double click on the button, you get a method pre-made for you, and it's called btn display underscore click. Now this essentially tells us that it's going to be the click event. Now essentially what happens is the program runs, it waits until you click on the button there. Now there is more code in the background about how it actually did that, but we don't need to worry about that now. So what I can do then is change the text on the button. Let's say so btn display dot, and there's all the properties, text being a property. I can change that to higher. Now it shouldn't. So if I run it now, I can flip back to the design view by clicking up there, and so forth. So let's just run it again. I now have a button on there, click it, it now says higher. Brilliant. I could also do other stuff with it as well, like change the back color of the form. Now if I'm changing the form, that's called this. You don't say the name of the form, you say this dot back color equals color dot, and let's do a nice pink, hot pink even. Now so we're going to run it again. Now you'll find, there we go, it clicks on that. Now there are more events that you can access than you can just by double clicking. You get the kind of default event. Lots of others you can use. So for instance, if I just pin that out, you can see this button here, it says events, click on that. So if I hover over the button, this mouse hover, I can create another event method. I just type the name of the event method in here. So the event method, I'll call it BTN display, so I know it's that button, and hover, press enter, and there it is. So all I've got to do now is do something when I hover over. Now I could do a pop-up. They're called message boxes in Visual Studio rather than pop-ups, but there's a shortcut to do it. So it's mbox or code snippet, and I can just say higher. Okay, so when I run that now, you will find that I just move the mouse over. Didn't click it then, take my word for it, and it says higher. Right, okay, so there's some very basic sort of things how we can interact with the forms. Now what we'll get to do is just do some simple input output. Now with the console, you've been basically forced to use read and write lines, console read and write lines. You can't use those here, so we need alternative ways to read stuff in. Now the main way to read stuff in is a text box. There are lots of other ways, but we do a text box to begin with. Now for some reason I can't even see a text box on there. Where's the text box? There it is there. Right, so we'll put one on there and another one. Okay, and that's not another one. Okay, no. Control, drag. There we go. Now I'm going to rename those. So that one's called text box 1 by default. So give it a decent name. Now this is still in that setting there, so you want to get it back into properties. Click on that one. So the name property is up near the top. Now because it's a text box, txt no one. I'll do the same for the second one. But if I tried to name it the same thing, it would come up with an error. Text no 2. And now I want a button, a new one, so I'll chuck a new button on there and chuck that there. Now I'm going to add the two values in the text boxes, so I'm going to put a plus sign on that. Okay, and I'm going to rename that BTN add. Right, so I'm going to put a number in that one, and then I'm going to display the answer. And I could just display it in one of the, well, anyway, I could display it up here in the text property of the form. I could display it on that button, but typically you might use a label, so we'll chuck one on just to show you. Now, a label is just for output only. You can't input on a label. So I'll just rename that LBL ANDS. And it has a text property just like the other controls. It says label 1. We'll leave that in there. No, we won't. We'll get rid of it, and we'll just put an underscore in there, a couple of underscores, so we can see it. If you don't put anything in there, you can't see it, so it's sometimes difficult to find where it is. Right, so we're now ready to code this button here. So double click, so we get the default click event. Now what we need to do is add together the two text boxes. Now you can't add together text boxes because essentially they're classes. You can't add two classes together, but what we need is to read the text property, convert it to an integer, store it in a variable. So int no1 equals, right, because the default comes out of a text box is text or string, then you can't, you need to get it into an integer. So we need to get it into int32, and then the name of the text box number 1, but can't leave it like that. You have to do dot text, which is the one you can actually see. Right, we shouldn't have an error with that line. No. Then we do the same for number 2. So no2 equals convert dot to int 32 and then txt no2. Right, that's good. And then we want another one called ands, int ands equals no1 plus no2. That should be fine because they're two integers. And then we're displaying the answer in the label. So LBL ands, don't forget it's dot text equals ands. Now, whoops, several things wrong with that. I haven't got an equal sign. The other thing is that if you put the mouse over there, it says it's going to convert it into a string. Now, I could do convert dot to string, but if you want to get it to a string, the easiest thing to do with most things, you can just do dot to string. All right, there is no dot to it or anything like that. So let's just run that and see what happens. So it should be able to write two numbers in there. If I don't write numbers, it will crash, but we'll deal with that another day. And there we go. Top quality calculator. Kind of. Okay, that's it. So that's just a gentle introduction to Windows programming.